As many of you have played Minecraft before, you're familiar with the fact that you use very simple artwork or very pixelated artwork to do a more interesting experience. Whenever we go to build a level, we're going to start with a plan. And this activity is pretty quick. You're going to plan out your name in block lettering. Because what you're going to do here is you're going to actually use a brush operation to create whatever shapes you have. So made out of brushes, a name like Jose was planned out first and then created. I'm not judging you on the quality. Maybe his S and his E are longer than his J. That's okay with me. But I do want you to have a plan and then stick with it. So that's part of one of our through lines. Here's another one, someone named Haley that planned out her name. The way that she did it in Microsoft Excel, and she just sized the boxes similarly, and she figured out where she wanted to have her geometry. Either way is fine. I just want to make sure that students have got their activity. Today's activity is to plan it out first. You can do it with pencil and paper. You can do it in Microsoft Paint. But have your name sketched out. That's all I need is something turned in. Okay. What we're going to be doing then is we're going to be bringing that into Unreal, and we're going to create it using a brush. So first part is to actually plan out your name. Let me get back to where we were. There we go. And this is another way that was done. The student just kind of did it this way. They're like, all right, from the side, it's going to look like this. And from the top, it's going to look like that. And they use their own handwriting rather than use a graph paper or anything like that. If you need graph paper, let me know. I can get some printed out for you here or send you a link on how to do that in the classroom. And so the first part's pretty easy. We're going to plan it out. The next activity, once you've planned your work, I want to do a demo on that. It's going to be done in the engine, and I'll show you that one as well. It's also on the calendar for Friday. It's create your name. So this would have required that somebody has a plan first and then they create it. In the couple of submissions that are here, this is an example where someone didn't follow the process and it doesn't match what I'm looking for. They kind of charged ahead. They didn't have the benefit of this demo I'm about to show you. So you can use pretty much any level you've got handy. This happens to be one that I've got going on, and I'm going to build my name. I don't know, I'll just pick this area over here and I'm going to build my name over here. And I'm just going to rotate my camera around so that when I start, I'm looking in that direction. And this is going to be using brush operations. So I've got a plan in my mind how I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to the geometry mode. In the upper left-hand corner over here where it says geometry, I'm going to grab a simple box. Now, a box that's additive, that's placed out in this area is just a box. You've played with these in the assignments that you're either doing presently or you're going to be doing soon. I'm going to check my alignment from the top here and see where I really am. If I touch F on the keyboard, it focuses on the actor. And I can see I've got it over the space where my player is still. I'm going to move it off of the edge. So it's kind of hanging in midair by my player. So there's my player right by the red arrow, and when they're looking straight out, they should see the single box sitting in the air. So let me do a play just to check my placement. Looking for my box. There it is up there. It's a little bit high. So let's move that down where I can see it a little bit better. I'm going to change from my top to my left viewport. Oh yeah, that's way above where my player is. Let me move it down where they can see it. Now when I click on play, I've got it aligned both up and down and side to side. So now the next thing I want to talk about is changing the geometry on this box I've got selected. I'm going to touch F on it again to focus on it so that it becomes a different shape. Rather than, and I think a lot of students would, how would you guys make a letter if you're doing block lettering? What would you do? Here's what I see a lot of students do. They hold down Alt and they drag and they make a copy, and they just kind of continue on their way making more and more copies of it. But here's the thing I want to teach you. When you're in geometry mode, look at the top here. There's another thing you can drop down here, and it's called brush editing. With brush editing, and I'm going to go back into perspective mode, which most of you are used to. If I focus on my object, touching F again, just to make sure I'm focused on that object. Here's the top. We know it's 500 by 500. If I set my grid to, guess what, folks? What number should I use? Yeah, so if I set that to 500, I know it's going to snap to 500. To extrude means to move something out by a certain amount. So if I pull on this, that's going to snap it up at 500 units right there. If I grab on the side over here, I can also snap it out 500 units. So every time I pull out an extrude, oops, I just grabbed a verticine. That was a mistake. I'm going to just do a Control Z. I'm going to touch F to refocus on this and show you what I did is I clicked just on the corner. But if I grab the top, and I'm in extrude mode in just the top, there we go, and I pull, now I'm in move mode, so I don't want to move it, just click on the word extrude, there we go, and I pull up again. I've now started to make my J. This is a brush. If I click on the brush, you'll notice in the World Outliner it's called Box Brush 3. I can double click on this, I can do a rename, I could rename this J. So if I go down to rename, I can rename it to J. Now, I could start another letter from scratch, or I could take this and make a copy of it and modify it so that it's used. I happen to have two J's in my name, my first and last name. So for me, if I select the whole brush and I move it, that might make more sense to make a copy of it for my last name as well. Once you've got a plan, I want you to use simple brushes, one brush per letter. Yeah, you could also use this for your extrude as well. So if I click on, and let me make this a little more complicated shape, and come around to the side here, just to demonstrate this method. If I click on a face, and I come up in the upper, so now I've selected the one side here. If I come up here and I say I want to do 5 segments or something like that, I can click in here with my mouse and roll up to a number of segments like 5. And the length on each of these is going to be, let's go 25. I'm just going to click in here and type in 25. And I click on apply. Rather than do it by mouse, each of these 5 units is 25 each. I'm going to Control Z that, because more realistically, I'm going to use units of 500, and I'll do 5 of those and I'll apply it. It's still the same brush. Those are 500 snaps. And if I clicked on this piece here and I did the same application, I've just made it 5 times as high. So anytime you click on one of these and apply, it's going to do that same operation. And this is starting to get rather complex and hopefully a little interesting. It's going to use what we call the normal, and it's going to extend it. I could build a parkour course much more interesting than just floating objects by working from a design and just continuing to do extrude on the different faces to make a shape that I'm interested in. It will remember the settings, and I can just continue. If you want to play test your level, you can right click. So the result of this, as you'll see in the assignment, is you'll have spelled your name out in geometry. Now, the next thing to understand is additive versus subtractive with this project. And I want to simplify this back to just a simple letter like the letter J. So this is pretty cool, I think. I just went back to the letter J. I'm going to touch F to get back to it. So if I want to do a cutaway of a letter, I really need to have another piece of geometry that I can delete it from. To create a new piece of geometry, I'm going to make sure that I'm no longer in brush editing mode. I'm going to change from mode here to the select mode. I'm going to grab a new piece of geometry, being a box, and I'm going to make sure this stays an additive brush to make sure we're adding geometry here. And I'm going to make it pretty huge. So I'm going to make this thing, I don't know, something like 32,000 by 32,000 by 32,000. Pretty much stepped on everything in the world. Now I'm inside of it, so let me move it down so it's lower. And actually, that last one could just be, I don't know, 80. It's fine. So there I've got some geometry here that I can work with. I want to carve out my name in this. First I add, this is the additive brush I added, and now I'm going to make a copy of this brush here. So if I do is it Alt Shift and drag, and I can make a copy of something. There we go. There's my copy. Now I'm going to rotate it. So I'm going to switch over to the rotate tool. So it's going flat. I should probably snapped it to 90. It would have made it a little bit easier. Go back to move. Make sure my grid's something about half that, maybe 100. Push this into the ground. Let's touch F and get close. Make sure we're actually in the ground here. There we go. And now to cut a hole, all I got to do is change this from an additive brush to a subtractive brush. I got to make sure I'm actually into the material or else it's going to do absolutely nothing. Where is the ground? I'm chasing the placement of the ground here. I went too far. There we go. So now they're overlapping. Let me get back to where I can show you myself here. So this is an additive brush on top of an additive brush. All I've got to do over on the right side here is change this from additive to subtractive, and it will cut a hole. So the deeper I push it in, the more of a hole it's going to make. So it all has to do with the last brush operation. I can't subtract. I could subtract from something that's already there, but I can't take an additive and put it on top of something that wasn't there before and make it a subtractive. So the order of operation is critical. So the result of you playing with this tomorrow is you'll have planned out your lettering. You'll have a positive version and a negative version of your world that's playable. You can jump on it or you could run through it. And if you've made a hole properly, you could even fall through the hole, which just got a death volume there, so I'm dead. All right. That was pretty much a speed run of what I want you to do. They're both reflected in the assignments that are due tomorrow. So here's a couple of them. So I'd like at least 5 letters. If you've got a really short name like Ish did, then I wanted him to do at least 2 more. If you've got a really long name like Christopher, you can abbreviate it to Chris. But just to make things, this, by the way, is in wireframe. These are additive and these are subtractive. If you go into your level that you're working in and you change from perspective to from lit to brush wireframe. Now, one thing that's causing some confusion is this big static mesh. I'm going to click on show and deselect static meshes to get rid of them. So now what I'm left with, if I get to an angle, the blue lines are adding and the red lines are subtracting. So there's an additive brush and there's a subtractive brush, and they're color coded within the engine to help you see it. So yeah, there's a little bit more than just you can add and subtract with it, and there's more we're going to do with this, but this is a stepping stone. I want you to practice doing additive and subtractive operations and be comfortable doing an extrude, because in addition to your name, which by the way is going to self-document who did the work, nobody else is going to go to the trouble of building your name in 3D, but you will. You'll be able to put this into your portfolio as a stepping stone if you wanted to, and we're going to use this skill when we start to lay out our levels. All right? Thank you for your patience. Any questions before I stop the demo? Yes, go ahead. The answer is you do not have to use a template. You may use first or third person, and you may add it to another existing level, such as your maze game, if you want to. Any other questions? All right, so you can start on that now. It's something you'll have done easily by the end of class tomorrow. And we'll be doing some more work with brushes. I think you're going to love the next topic we do is going to really be super cool. All right. Thanks again, students.